It's a new year and a new chance for you to make a fresh start with your compliance. For the next 31 days on the FCPA Compliance Report, we're going to be bringing you a daily tip, strategy, or idea that you can use to improve your program. Here's your host, Tom Fox, the Compliance Evangelist.
This is Tom Fox, and I'm pleased to have as my guest today Eric Feldman, Senior Vice President at Affiliated Monitors. Eric, first of all, welcome, and thank you for taking the time to visit with me today.
My pleasure, Tom.
Eric, I wanted to have you as a guest on this podcast for this episode around third parties as innovation partners for the following reason. You've actually done this. And so I just wondered if you could describe your experience around this when you were an Inspector General.
Sure, my pleasure, Tom. I was the Inspector General of an agency called the National Reconnaissance Office, which is the spy satellite agency of the intelligence community. And that agency had hundreds of contractors executing billions of dollars in program money, building satellites, doing R&D, research, the building and operations of the spy satellites. And as the IG, we were dealing with lots of procurement fraud on a regular basis. And I wanted to be more proactive. And one of the things that we did is we got our contractors together on a regular basis in what I called a best practice forum. And we would give them opportunities to describe innovative practices that they've put into place to ensure a strengthened ethical culture and compliance with federal contracting regulations into their programs. And we first started with the larger companies, the Lockheed's, Northrop, Raytheon, and Boeing, and had them talk about their programs. And there were things in their practices, innovative techniques that some of the smaller contractors and subs could then pick up. And it became a kind of a very exciting laboratory for innovation. And over time, we had more and more contractors that were to present at these conferences. We started once a year, and then we ended up doing it every 6 months because of the excitement generated by it. For me, as the Inspector General, I got a great benefit, which was ensuring that my third-party partners were in compliance and running our business in an ethical manner.
Eric, I've heard you previously talk about a part of a best practice compliance program that would seemingly be unrelated to third parties as innovation partners, but I'd like you to maybe expand upon, or at least explain why you think the audit of a third party is so critical to having a third party as an innovation partner.
Sure. The kind of a foundational step that an organization needs to take with its third parties is to have insight into how they do their business. And the right to audit clause that's put into contracts is an essential piece of that. And it's not only having that ability to audit your third parties, but actually exercising that, not necessarily or not exclusively on the financial side, but auditing what they're doing on ethics and compliance. Do they have a code of conduct? Is that code distributed? What kind of training are they providing to their staff? How are they ensuring a strong ethical culture with good decision-making surrounding their federal contract work? And you have to do that first. You have to get a baseline understanding of their ethics and compliance posture before you can evolve that relationship into the next level, which would be a partnership in working together to create innovative best practices in ethics and compliance.
Eric, we're running close to the end of this podcast, but I was wondering if there are 3 key takeaways you could leave our listeners with today.
Sure. I think that, first of all, third parties need to be looked at not as the enemy, that every contractor has the potential for risk, which they do, but look at third parties as partners in the design and implementation of an ethics and compliance program. Second, in order to partner with them and to innovate, you first have to audit and create that baseline relationship in order to make that relationship evolve. And then the third point is use a group of your third parties in a conference or collaborative way as innovation labs on a regular basis to up the game for not just your organization, but your other third parties as well.
Eric, this has been a great guest segment for this podcast series. I wanted to thank you so much for engaging with me today.
My pleasure, Tom.
This is Tom Fox again. I'd like to thank you for joining me for this episode of 31 Days to a More Effective Compliance Program. If I could ask one call to action, if you would tell one person about this podcast, as passing the information along in this podcast is the fastest way to grow this podcast. Thanks again for listening. I hope you'll join me tomorrow where I take up another topic of 31 Days to a More Effective Compliance Program.